Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm so glad you're here with us today and that you have tuned in on what I'm just going to guess has been a busy day. So you guys are here for helping every voice be heard, for strategies to build student confidence in sharing. So I am very hopeful that you're going to get a lot out of this webinar today. I know it's a passion area of mine, so let's get going. My name is Kim Harding, and I'm here with Heather today. Heather's going to be behind the scenes to make sure we don't have any glitches or problems. Would you like to say hi, Heather?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you, Heather. And then we also have a resource here that is going to be linked in the chat for this webinar that you can use as kind of like a guide or even to use later after the webinar if you're going back through it trying to look for different resources that we talk about today. Awesome. So I am coming to you from Grand Rapids, Michigan, from the Van Andel Institute for Education. And on the screen here is just a little bit of information about who we are, what we do. We work with K-12 students in all different kinds of programs. We work with educators, and we also have resources for families like summer camps, those types of things. We are part of the Van Andel Institute, which has a research section, it has a graduate school, all focused on science and developing that love of science and building curiosity in kids as they come through our programs. All right, so I would like to get started to see who is here with me today. So if you could take a moment and just check where you're coming to me from, that would be great. And then Heather will share the results.
Yeah, I'm going to close it right now. Well, it looks like we have 13% K2, 38% 3-5, 50% 6 through 8, 25% 9 through 12, and 13% other.
Great, that's a really great mix. All right, thank you, Heather. All right, so now I know who I'm speaking with. A little bit about me. I've been in education for over 30 years, so I have a lot of different educational experiences. I was a public school teacher for a while, K-5. I was a DK-5 STEM curriculum designer and teacher. I taught abroad for a while. I did some secondary and post-secondary in a non-traditional educational setting, and currently a K-12 specialist, learning specialist at Van Andel. So thank you for joining me again. Our sponsor today for this webinar is Science on the Grand. And this is a STEAM conference for K-8 educators. Although if you teach above those grade levels, you would still benefit from this conference. So as I just shared about me, I've been in education for a long time. When I was in the public schools, I went to this conference as a public school teacher, and it was invaluable to me. A lot of the passion and knowledge I have of teaching science now, I did gain through going to this conference. So Science on the Grand, it's the beginning of July. I know that's summer, but this conference really pampers teachers. It's all about getting together, supporting each other, learning great things that we can do in our classrooms for our students and for ourselves to make our jobs more enriching and engaging. So hopefully some of you could join us. All right, now we're going to get into the content. I want you for a second to visualize your students, your classroom, and try to make some connections as I put some words up on the screen. So you're picturing your classroom and you're seeing these words. Crickets, the blurters, the thinkers, always knows the answer, and is your hand up? So maybe thinking about your classroom, seeing these words, you have started to think about those kiddos in your classroom, those students who either are silent when asked a question, or the blurters, the ones that don't even finish letting you speak the question, or the thinkers, the ones that raise their hands, but then when you call on them, they need some time. They got to think it through, do some processing, and get their words in order. and then always knows the answer. This kid's hand is up immediately, all the time, every time. And then the kid is your hand up. So you're wondering, like, does that kid have their hand up? Maybe, maybe not. Is it slightly above their desk or table? So let's talk about that kid just for a second. So the is your hand up student, some considerations for that student to get us started. So that is your hand up kid might have a fear of being wrong. They might be experiencing some anxiety for just speaking in front of other people. They might need some more processing time, so they're a little apprehensive about really confidently putting their hand up in the air, or maybe they just don't feel like they're in a safe place where they can share and not be criticized, or something like that. So story time, I was one of these kids, the is your hand up kid. And for me, it was about anxiety and just needing a little bit of time. But time for me in this situation brought my anxiety level up, because as I would hear my peers sharing their thinking, their ideas, their thoughts, I would just then start burying mine deeper and deeper under all of their great ideas and lack the confidence then to share mine. So that hand might be way up there at first, but by the time 2 or 3 people shared, my hand was pretty much under my desk. So we're going to talk about students like that today and what we can do to support them. And we are also going to talk about many other kinds of students. So a poll, one more, the last one to get us started. I want to know, before we jump into this, which area that are listed here do you find most challenging in your classroom? So is it challenging for you to create that safe space? Sorry, I just lost my screen. Balancing participation for those immediate hand raisers to the kids that are more silent, building that culture of listening, or providing multiple ways to share. So if you could just let me know which of those is most challenging for you, that will help me as we go through today and dig into some of these strategies.
All right, it looks like we have about 75% voting. I'm going to close the poll now and share the results.
All right, great.
So it looks like we have 19% creating space for student thinking, 63% balancing participation, 0 for building a culture of listening, and 19% for providing multiple ways to share.
Okay, great. That is very helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Heather. All right. Well, with that, we're going to jump in then. Our first strategy is the first one listed there, that creating space for thinking. So supporting students who need time and lowering that pressure that they might be feeling in the classroom so they can express their ideas in a way that's comfortable for them. So strategy number 1 in this creating space is the wait time and processing time. So we can identify these students by just watching them operate in our classrooms, and they need a little bit more time. So I'm going to tell you a little story with this one, because this just happened to me last week. I was working with a kindergarten class, and one of the students kept raising their hand and putting it back down, kept raising their hand, putting it back down. And a little bit into the lesson, they confidently put their hand up. So I immediately tried to get to them, called on them, and they looked ready to share. She started to talk, and it just wasn't coming out the way she wanted it to. And I just tried to support her. It's okay, take your time, like get your thoughts together, we can wait. And she's like, okay. So she was like sitting there, not really doing much. And then another person walked up to her and said, do you have anything to share? And she kind of sat up straight, eyes bugged out a bit, and she just shook her head no. And she was done. She was out. So these kiddos that need that extra wait time, we need to try to find a way to build up our classroom environment where they feel like waiting and spending a little time thinking about what they want to say is okay. And we're going to get into that a little bit. Another strategy here is no hands up yet. So this strategy I love if you have a class full of kiddos that just don't even let you get the question out and all the hands are up, but they don't even know what you're asking. So no hands up is when you say, okay, we're gonna think about this, we're gonna ask this question, and then you say no hands up for 20 seconds. So everyone kind of is required then to sit there and think for whatever amount of time you gave them. And obviously that is grade level dependent and the content dependent. So no hands up is a great way to slow them down and get them really thinking about not only what they want to share, but how they're going to say it. So now I want to talk about crickets, like that time in our classroom where we ask a question and it's completely silent. Everyone's just looking at you. So this is a time that I think is actually quite valuable. So let's say I ask the question, why are birds so loud in the morning? And everybody sits and looks at me. So I, as the teacher, can start modeling, thinking about this question and asking questions about this question out loud for my students. So I could say, well, I wonder if they're trying to find the other birds. I wonder if they're trying to find food. I wonder if it helps warm them up. So I'm going to wonder all of these things. And through doing this, you will be surprised how many students start to engage and want to say something about what you are saying. Maybe not directly the question, but all of your wonderings are around that question. So if you can say anything that will like spark something, that is a great way to get these kids thinking and feeling a little bit more confident in speaking up. So some language we can use for creating this space. And I use these almost every time I'm with a group of students. Like I said, I teach K-12 different sciences, so I'm working with a lot of different groups of students, but this works for all of them. If a student is struggling to get out their words or their thoughts, I simply say to them, we can come back to this when you're ready. Like, it's okay. Do you need a little more time to think about it? Oftentimes they say yes, and I say, okay, raise your hand when you're ready to share. And then thank you for trying this. Simple but empowering to those kids who have to like muster up some bravery to share out loud with the class. So why does creating space matter? This reduces the pressure on the students. And if we can do that even a little bit, our engagement is going to go up. Those kids that have something rolling around in their head, they're going to be more willing to share that. So it increases that participation and just builds up their confidence, which is key. Strategy 2, balancing participation in the classroom. So making sure all students, they have a voice. They're able to be part of the conversation. And like we've already discussed a little bit, not all students are ready right now to share. They might need some support. So let's get into that. So 3 strategies on this page for those maybe slow starters when it comes to sharing. So I feel like most educators are very familiar with turn and talks. So I have 2 different versions of turn and talk that I have developed to try to overcome some of these hurdles, these barriers for our kids that have a hard time sharing. The first turn and talk, it's with an assigned starter. So we pose our question, whatever we want them to turn and talk about. But when you pose the question, you go to each group and you say, you guys are going to turn and talk, and Emily is going to start. You guys are going to turn and talk, and Joshua is going to start. You guys are going to turn and talk, and Bill is going to start. So you assign the starter for that discussion. And that starter is the student that you identify to be that student that needs a little extra push. They're with a partner or they're in a small group, their confidence is going to be higher, their anxiety is going to be lower, and a turn and talk with an assigned starter is very helpful to get them sharing their ideas, because then they can get theirs out first. They don't have to get worked up about it or forget what they were going to say. The next turn and talk, I call turn and talk submit. So this one, same thing, you're turning and talking, but rather than raising a hand and sharing out verbally, you write down your top ideas, teacher determined, right? Write down your very best idea, write down your top 3 ideas, whatever the teacher wants from the students. So turn, talk, submit, you write it down on paper, and then you literally turn that in, put it in a basket, hand it to your teacher, however the teacher wants to manage that. That strategy sets kids up to be completely free of pressure. This is an anonymous activity. They do not put their names on the paper. This is a discussion support. So when they submit their paper, you read through them out loud to the class, share all of the ideas. People will hear theirs, they'll hear others, but there's no pressure there. And then something that I say very often, and it's so powerful, who has something to add to that? So our students that have a hard time sharing, they are most often very willing to add on to someone else's thinking. So if you have your person that's ready to go all the time and you call on them and they say something, you could then say, who has something else to add to that? And you can start making eye contact to encourage those students to add on to that. And I would say 75% of the time, those students will then engage in sharing, adding on to the first student's comments or ideas. Okay, so now for those frequent hand raising students. First thing that I think is important, rather than just seeing their hand go up and like looking for other people, they're excited, they want to share what they have to share. So I feel that we should acknowledge those students. I see your hand is up. Let's hear what Bill has to say first. So acknowledge that you see them so they're not, dancing in their seat or getting frustrated. And let's hear what someone else has to say first. And then there's something called the listening challenge. And this is challenging those students who are just ready to go all the time to maybe listen a little bit more critically and think critically about what their classmates are saying. So you could say something in the listening challenge like, I'm going to call on Emma. I want you to listen to see what she shares and how it compares with your thinking. So you could say that. So you are getting them to engage with what she's saying with interest and then reflecting on that. You could also say something along the lines of, who can listen really closely to what Emily is going to say and then summarize it and restate it to the class. So all of this gets them to, again, slow down, really listen and be part of that conversation rather than trying to be the conversation. All right, and this matters because it prevents just those kids who are ready all the time from dominating the discussion. That gets very heavy for those kids who would like to share but aren't ready right away. So that it expands that participation across your classroom because the confidence goes up. All right, strategy 3, teach and model respectful listening. So this is just building that classroom where students feel safe to share, okay? Making them more willing, and it's important for them to feel heard. So explicitly modeling listening behaviors. And I have hearing here because I always like to tell my students that there is a difference between listening to someone and hearing someone. If you're listening to someone, that could just be you hear the sounds coming out of their mouth. If you're hearing someone, you are listening to each word and trying to make sense of it. You're putting it together. So it's very intentional that you are trying to understand as you are listening. You are hearing what they're saying. And then modeling patience during sharing. So again, normalizing that wait time. You can model this as a teacher. A student asks you a question and you could say, let me think about that for a second. And you sit there and ponder it in front of your class. Maybe to the point where they start getting a little antsy, just so they know it's okay. And then you'll know when it's time to be like, you know what? I think this about your question. These are my reasons, and you can answer that question. But modeling wait time is very important for students because we live so fast all the time. Getting them to just slow down and know that it's okay to go slow is great. So, and then modeling examples and non-examples of respectful listening. You can do this through role play, call a student up to have a conversation with you, have the class point out the things that were good, the things that maybe were not so good. And then at large, acknowledging respectful behavior when you're noticing that as your class. Say, wow, you guys, I just noticed that all of you, while they were presenting, were facing them, you were engaged with what they were doing, you were looking at them, your hands weren't busy, and like, great job being respectful listeners. So just that acknowledgement, that positive praise. And then for language that you could use with this, you could tell your whole group what we were just talking. Let's show we're listening with our bodies, right? That body language we're showing, that respect that we're showing to whoever is talking. And then thank you for giving them the time to finish their thinking. This falls right in line with that normalizing wait time. Thanking your class, acknowledging that they were patient and that they are letting people finish their thinking and giving them the space to do that. All right, and why it matters, it again creates that safe place. It encourages more students to take risks if they know they're going to be listened to and they're going to be let to talk. And then just builds that positive classroom culture. All right, strategy 4, provide multiple ways to share ideas. And this, again, is an attempt to reduce that pressure and increase the access to all of your students to participating, because not all students are comfortable speaking out loud. All right. So the first strategy I want to talk about is I wonder, I think. Some of you might be familiar or have heard of a wonder wall. This is something that I used to have in my classroom all the time. I really loved it. I lived by it. My students loved it. You just turn a bulletin board or a poster board, whatever space you have, into a place where they can put sticky notes up about things they wonder. It could be any content area, but obviously focus on something you're doing at school. And my version of this that I really evolved to was the I wonder, I think board, because it is really great for all the students to be able to put up their wonders. And this is a way to be heard in your classroom, but it's kind of hard stop. You put your wonder up, but then there was no way for anyone to give their input on a daily basis. So the I think side of the wonder board is what you think about people's wonders. So this is a really powerful way to get those students who won't share out to engage in conversation on some level using this I wonder and I think board. The next one is planned participation. So I had a girl several years back, upper L, who always had great ideas. She was smart, she was creative, she was a hard worker, but when it came to sharing out, she was a no-go, like every time, a no-go. And what I learned from her and with her was if she knew it was coming, she could do it. So I would go to her, and I've done this with other students since then, and I would say, hey, I loved the ideas you had about this math concept yesterday. When we get down to the floor, we all get back to our seats, can I call on you to share just one of those things? And almost every time, yep, I can do that. But the key here, the catch, is as soon as you get to the floor, to your seats, wherever you're going as a group, you need to call on them right away. So they have no time for that anxiety to build, for their confidence to drop. And it was amazing to me what a difference that made for those students that would never speak up. They knew it was going to happen, they could plan on it, they could think about their words, and they would deliver almost every time. Okay, next one, writing before speaking. So getting the kids to write their thinking down and then sharing. And a second step to this was the next strategy. Hoop, there it is. This is so fun because what kid doesn't love to wad up paper and throw it across their classroom, right? It creates a mess, but it's fun. They get up, they miss the shots, and this is how it works. So you pose the question, whatever thinking you want them to do, they write it down on a piece of paper, scrap paper, whatever you're using. They crumple it up and they toss it into a container that you have placed out for the activity. Once everybody has made their shot and put their thinking in the basket or container, the teacher can go over and start pulling out different thoughts, different ideas people wanted to share, different thinking, and read it out loud to the class. Now, you could do this one anonymously as well, or you could have them put their names on it, or it could be up to them. So Hoop There It Is a great way to kind of, it's almost a brain break for the kids because they get to do something interactive, it's fun, they laugh, they watch each other miss and make baskets. So that is a really good strategy. And then the last one I'm gonna talk about on this page is take a walk. So this one's also good for getting the kiddos up out of their seats. It's good if we're kind of at a standstill, we're running out of ideas. So take a walk would be you posing a question or something to discuss, and you say, okay, take a walk. You need to visit 3 people in 3 minutes or 2 people in 2 minutes. I would typically do a minute a person. And they would get up, they would walk around, they would have to talk to however many people in however many minutes. They'd return to their seats, and then they would be asked to share out what someone else shared with them. So again, you're taking that pressure off of yourself because you're sharing what someone else shared with you. So that is another really powerful way to get kids to speak up. All right, and why this matters. It lowers the barriers to participation, just like all of the other strategies. And it honors all those different styles of learning and communicating that we see in our classrooms, and it really increases their engagement across the board throughout the whole day, all the subject areas. So it's a really powerful thing. All right, and I have a bonus strategy for you guys. No right or wrong answers. This, if you can get this established in your classroom, can be something that are make or break a discussion, a brainstorming session, because you are emphasizing effort or ideas over correctness, if it's right or wrong. So you want them just throwing out all of their thinking without fear that it's going to be shot down. So this normalizes mistakes as we learn and as we are being introduced to new things. And there's some really powerful language we could use to dig into this. And the first one here is, tell me more about your thinking. This is a great question because someone shared something that they probably feel excited about or strongly about, or they feel like it might be right or might be on the right track. And you're asking them to dig deeper into this. And another one is, that's an interesting perspective, right? So what if somebody, this would be if someone shares something that might not be directly like the way you're trying to get them to go, but it's interesting. And after you make this comment as an interesting perspective, you can try then to wrap that back around to where the conversation needs to head. And I feel like as teachers, we're all very professional, very good at that. The next one, wow, I've never thought about it like that before. So now you're making a personal connection with that kid, and then thank you for sharing that. So you are genuinely sharing an excited moment with that student for sharing a new way of thinking about something, which is just going to encourage them to do that more in the future. And this one, this last one, whoa, did you guys hear that? I love using this one so much when I can use it with that kid who never speaks up. And they finally did it. I'm going to make a big deal out of the fact that they shared, and I don't care what they share. If it's on topic, I'm going to be like, whoa, did you guys hear that? That was an amazing idea, or that was an incredible way to think about that. And just carry that to the point where they understand that what they just did was pretty phenomenal. Very, very cool. All right. So things to remember as we wrap up today. Every student has something worth sharing. We just have to be able to get it out of them. And that confidence that requires grows with us giving them time, which I know is a struggle in the classroom, us supporting them, which we are all great at, and just giving them opportunities to share out in a way that works for them, that works for their communication style, their learning style, their personality type. So just time, support, and opportunities. So hopefully some of these strategies that I've shared with you today can help you reach some of those kiddos who won't share, and maybe slow down some of those kiddos that always feel like they have to share first. Maybe they feel like they're right all the time or they're better, but whatever their thinking is, we can find balance in our classrooms to make sure that every voice in our classroom is heard and that we're building up that confidence of our students. And with that, I want to say thank you so much for giving me your time today. I hope it was beneficial for you. And we do have another webinar next month, which is going to be great. So that is on your HyperDoc, so you can check that out. That is linked there. And don't forget about Science on the Grand, which is literally the best educator conference that you could attend. All right, thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.